What's up, Swole Soldiers? This is the Strength House Podcast, episode 14, with special guest Jim Laird. Jim's going to talk to us tonight about the relationship between performance and health, as well as the importance of work capacity and how not having any might be holding you back in the gym. Lastly, we're going to touch upon training women, especially in a powerlifting context. You don't want to miss this one. 2 great beers, as always. Enjoy the show.
The Strength House Podcast, featuring Greg Robbins and Tony Bonvecchio.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Strength House Podcast. We are on episode 14, and we have 14 episodes. Not bad. Lasting again longer than everyone thought we would, but. We have an awesome show for you guys tonight. We have Jim Laird in the house from Kentucky. I got Tony B next to me. How are you guys doing tonight?
Fantastic.
Yeah, doing great.
Awesome. All right. So Jim, we're really excited to have you on. Obviously, I think we consider you a mentor and a friend. So to be able to pick your brain and get you on the podcast is huge for us. So thank you for taking the time to come out.
Well, you're very welcome, and I'll send you your check. Just give me your address.
Okay, I'll send you a different address, so if it doesn't make it.
So, Jim, as you know, this is as much a craft beer review show as it is a show about powerlifting and strength and conditioning. So, Greg and I always share 2 beers. You want to let our audience know what you're sipping on tonight?
Sure, I am a celiac, and I knew that you guys were kind of the beer thing. I'm not a big drinker, so this could really turn out to be interesting, but this is... This is Cidergeist. It's out of Cincinnati. It's a cider. They've got the semi-dry is good. The dry is what I really like, but I couldn't find any tonight. So basically, what I do is I take and I've also got Kentucky Wild Gin. Okay.
Yes.
So I basically take gin, and I've got my Rhinegeist glass, and I take a little bit of gin because the cider is kind of sweet, which I don't really. My favorite drink used to be black and tan. But I'm a celiac, so I can't drink that. So I put a little splash of gin in there, and this is 94 proof. So by the end of the show, this could get pretty cool. So click that closed, and then we pop this open. There's a restaurant here in town that I frequent, and they have Angry Orchard, so I get a shot of gin in Angry Orchard. They call it the Angry Jim. You get that nice sound effect right there. So the gin kind of takes out the sweetness a little bit and makes it a little bitey, which I kind of like. So
that's awesome. I mean,
Greg's tried this before.
I did get to experience it firsthand. I almost decided that's what we should do tonight. Although I didn't realize it was gin. I guess I thought you were pouring bourbon in there last time.
No, I've used some different things, but gin usually works the best because it gives it that little bit of an edge.
Nice.
We can only hope to have a drink named after us.
Yes.
So that's like the ultimate.
Well, if you ate at this place as much as I did, you would get a drink named after you too.
And also have it be called an Angry whatever would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
Angry Greg.
Angry Greg. that could be any drink pretty much. Tonight we got a few pretty good beers. This one comes compliments of Frank Duffy, one of our coworkers. He actually just left this beer at my house after a barbecue this weekend, so we're going to capitalize on his mistake and use it on the podcast. This is from LIC Beer Project in Queens, New York. It's a collaboration with McKellar Brewing.
Yep.
In San Diego, and McKellar's a pretty big name in the brewing world.
Yep, McKellar does a lot of interesting stuff. I was thinking McKellar was in Denmark, I thought. I think it's
maybe they have multiple locations. I don't...
What's the name of it? Platinum Plus?
Platinum Plus. It's a 5.5% alcohol India Pale Ale brewed with spelt. I don't Jim, you know what spelt is?
It's a grain that sometimes is gluten-free.
Ooh.
There's also a gentleman's establishment here in Lexington called Platinum Plus, so I don't know if there's a connection there, but could be.
Might be.
I thought spelt was that stuff that that whales ate. It like sifted through their teeth and they would eat it
That's almost like a shrimpy type creature. That's
it's like plankton. Something like that.
Crustacean kind of deal.
Like the sea monkeys that you buy.
There's no spelt in the ocean.
That doesn't sound like spelt at all.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, you can't really say that for sure because we haven't explored the entire ocean to be scientific. But
yeah, there could be a
pretty sure there's no wheat floating around in the ocean.
There could be a big underwater ocean floor farming community down there. All right, so pours pretty hazy.
Yep, pretty hazy. A lot of head.
Smells like fruit.
Yeah, smelled great, and it tastes pretty great too.
Yeah, that is good. Frank said this was terrible, but that just goes to show how bad Frank is at rating beers, which is a pretty known thing at this point.
Yeah, he has some trouble. He's still young. He's still learning. He's really only legally been drinking beers for, what, like 6 months, something like that? He's just a baby.
Yeah, he's got no opinion really on the matter.
But I think this has got all the taste of the New England hazy IPAs that we like. It doesn't have like the thickness or softness of the mouthfeel. It's pretty light and crisp. I like it a lot.
The finish is very like weedish, kind of, whatever spelt is. Yeah. Whatever spelt is, I feel like I can taste it in here.
Yeah. It's an ancient grain.
Ancient.
We got wild special gin, ancient grains in our beer.
Yes.
This is like Whole Foods of alcohol right now in here.
So Jim,
from the hollers of Kentucky.
While we're sipping on our beers here, Jim, why don't you tell our audience, if they don't already know about you, give them a little bit of information of who you are, what you do, and what your gym is all about there in Kentucky.
Sure. Well, my name is Jim Laird, obviously. I played every sport you can imagine. I grew up in Canada. I grew up in northern Canada, near Edmonton, Alberta. Played football, played rugby, wrestled, played football. Decided, for whatever reason, that I wanted to play football in the United States. I was a fullback. Probably should have stuck with wrestling, but went down to California, played at a JUCO, transferred to a school in Virginia called Liberty. Didn't really realize that there was this career called strength and conditioning. They really didn't have, unless you were like an Olympic level athlete, like Charlie Francis used to train Ben Johnson at the University of Alberta. But beyond that, there wasn't that many people that had like a strength and conditioning coach. So it wasn't really a big thing. So when I got to Liberty, it was like, wow, this is cool. I can like get paid to lift weights and stuff. Because I was supposed to be an elementary ed teacher. And so, I still get to teach, but I'm actually getting paid and stuff. So, went from Liberty to Arizona, where I met a guy named Jim Windler, and Jim and I became friends. Jim kind of got me into powerlifting after my football career was over. Brad Arnett was my strength coach there, who is phenomenal. He works with like J.J. Watt and J.J. Watt's brother. He's got a facility in Wisconsin called Next Level Performance. Great strength coach. He was kind of like the guy that introduced me to like how to work around injuries, like strength is important, but it's not the only thing. You have to be able to move well, too, because with my background coming from high school, it was like I was trying to lift as much weight as I could. And, when you're working with athletes, excuse me, a little gin burp there. When you're working with athletes, you realize there's a point where strength becomes diminishing, especially if they're using a bad position you're strengthening a bad position. And Brad was the first guy that really was like, hey, there's more to this. We've got to be able to move well, too. He's a really smart guy. And so I was in between jobs. I met Jim. Jim and I stayed in touch. And Jim ended up getting a GA at Kentucky. And so basically I was coming out to help Jim with his first powerlifting meet in like 2001. And I left Aspen, Colorado, where I was living at the time. And I drove, like the day after September 11th, I drove to Lexington. And started working at a little studio here, and got this kid who had just fractured his spine, actually in the weight room doing a powerlifting meet. He was like 14. He was straddle stance deadlifting 405, like with a straddle, like, you ever heard of that? Like where they straddle the bar and lift it?
Like a Jefferson?
Like between
no,
the legs?
but they straddle it, like they take a stance, like a split stance over the bar.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it's insane. And so this kid ended up having a fractured spine. He was in a brace he was a kicker. And just saw something in this kid. So I ended up working with this kid for 2 years. He had played 1 year high school football. And I got started when he was like 125. He ended up at like 190. Ran an electric 4.3 at Wake Forest. Had one of the most successful single season football careers in the history of the state of Kentucky. Finished second in the 100-meter dash and ended up getting a full ride to Wofford. And then I ended up getting this other girl who had blown her ACL out. She was 13 or 14. She'd blown her ACL out 3 times.
Jeez.
And so I started working with her, and we were able to get her within a year to play her goal was just to play her final 2 years of soccer without hurting herself, essentially. She didn't want to play in college or anything. But we were able to get her. She was one of the slowest girls on the team, got her to be one of the faster girls. And after those 2 success stories, she's able to play her last 2 years of soccer with no knee braces. And after that, it just, obviously the business just started pouring in. I was working with a ton of athletes, mostly fixing broken ones from inappropriate high school strength programs. Stupid, really high box squats with crazy weight slamming into, you know what I'm talking about. But what happened was I ended up working at a place called Lexington Athletic Club as an independent contractor, but people started seeing me training these athletes, and I figured out really quickly, like, you can't make your living training athletes. And I started picking up these ladies, and so we started with really simple stuff, and within a year or two, I realized that females were basically going to pay my bills. And so just introducing them to basic strength training, their bodies would change, they'd get more confident, they'd feel better, they'd have to train less. And so I have this blend of, I worked at LAC until 2009. In 2008, 2009, I kind of hit a wall, had some health issues, and I ended up working at a CrossFit as a kind of a consultant. And basically, I saw the CrossFit, and I was like, the community is so awesome. Like their community, their environment, but we just need a little bit smarter approach. And so I decided to open my own facility. And so in 2008, 2009-ish, 2010-ish, I opened the facility, and had about 50 clients already that I've been working with, most of them since I moved here. I've got a ton of clients that I've had since 2001. We do like group strength training classes. We do semi-privates. I have a women's powerlifting team, but we've got everything from, like, my oldest client's 90. I've got 12, 13-year-old kids. I've got people with Parkinson's disease. I've got, you name it. Like, I've got it. So we do a little bit of everything. We just try and keep things as simple as possible. And, a big part of what I do is educating people on the difference between performance and health.
Awesome. Yeah, they're not always one and the same.
No. That's, if you're chasing performance, you're going to be riding that edge. And people don't understand that. Like, one of the first things I do is when someone comes through the door is I explain to them, okay, what's your main goal? And my goal is to look good and feel good. Then why are you training like a professional athlete? Because most professional athletes don't feel good. They might look good because they're genetically blessed, but most of them are hurt. Most of them have injuries that they're working around, and most of them don't live that long.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think I see it go the other way too, where people think because they train for performance, they can ignore the health part of
Correct.
the equation as well.
Right.
And the two are definitely not mutually exclusive. I mean, ignoring your health is going to decrease your performance, and
absolutely.
Training on the other end, like you guys said, solely for the sake of performance, is going to come with probably a decrease in general health, at least from a
sure.
orthopedic
And it's a matter of
standpoint.
managing it as a smart coach. Or, the mistake I made was, I was competing in powerlifting, plus I was working 12, 14 hours a day. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't taking care of myself. I did that for a long time before I crashed and burned. I ended up getting inflammatory bowel disease and, almost dying from ulcerative colitis. So that was a huge wake-up call for me. So that was a huge, I would tell my clients to take care of themselves, but here I was, you guys know, what do you feel like after you train, an 8-hour day and you've worked with multiple, working with a high school team and then training 4 to 6 people an hour all day? You're exhausted. And then you pop 2 ephedrine and a caffeine pill, and then you take a Rip Force and you turn up Metallica and you train.
Yeah.
And that's what I did for a long time. I was setting personal records a week before I almost bled to death.
Yeah.
So just from that strong will, and so a big part of what I do is educating people on, like, it might feel good to push yourself hard, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we need to make sure we're putting money back in the bank so you can spend it. And the big thing, what I do is, the biggest thing I've noticed is, Eric tweeted something about him going into a gym, and people talk about overtraining. And he's like, nobody in here is training hard enough to even worry about overtraining. And that's so true. Like, most of the people I see, and I'm sure you guys see this too, there's just zero capacity, zero work capacity. There's no ability to handle any kind of hard training because they just don't have the capacity to do it. And, that comes through smart movement, through walking, through nutrition, through sleep, through low-level manual labor. And most people today don't have it, and it's going to get worse. As we become more sedentary, us as strength coaches are going to have to basically become glorified phys ed teachers and build that capacity before we even push any kind of performance.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a high school athlete. He's a goalie, a hockey goalie, and he has an invested interest in the podcast. And every week he tries to ask a question, and so far they've been a bit off topic. So
sure.
I told him today, I said that you were coming on, so you told him that he could research a little bit and come up with a question for you.
Oh boy, this should be good.
No, I think it's good. I screened it before.
Okay.
He got a little help from me, a little coaching. So this comes from Cam, one of our high school athletes. He saw that the balance between training and recovery is something that you've written about and talked about a lot. So his question is, what today do you find to be the most effective tool for recovery?
Walking. Honestly, going for a walk, not for exercise, but for leisure. Like, people go out and they think they're going to walk to burn calories. You need to walk for enjoyment. Sleep. Sleep is free, but nobody does it. Everybody's up till 2 o'clock in the morning on Facebook, on Instagram, on Snapchatty or Chitty Chatty or whatever it's called. I'm getting old. You can see the white in my beard. But, these kids, I tell kids when they come in all the time, I'm like, look, you're going to be investing money here. You're going to be coming in and making effort. If you're up till 2 o'clock in the morning chatting with some girl or some guy on the phone, you're basically you're wasting my time and yours. So, there's a combination of things: walking, sleep, and the good nutrition. I mean, that's pretty much, what we try and get people to do. And just getting people to shut off and turn their phone off and relax. Just, lay down in the park somewhere and breathe for 5 or 10 minutes and just chill. Most people don't, a lot of the kids, it's really interesting because most of the people that use the float tank that we have here are young kids. They're teenagers. And they come out of there and they're like, oh my God, I've never felt like that before. Because they've always had a phone, they've always had an iPad, they've always been connected, they've always been running around like a chicken with a head caught. And they get into that float tank and they just for the first time in their life, they're relaxed and they come out, they love it. They love going in there. They come out and they're just like, that is so awesome. They tell all their friends, they get on little Snappy Chatty or whatever it is and they put it out there. It's hilarious. Some of the main business I get from the float tank is from teenagers.
That's awesome. Cool.
It's insane. It's crazy.
And that's probably the longest time that they've gone without their phone during waking hours.
Yes.
Probably in a long time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you don't want to drop that phone in that float tank.
So I haven't been in a float tank. I kind of get the gist of it, but can you explain to us a little bit how it works and what it does?
Yeah, so it's called the self-deprivation tank. There's a really good article in Time magazine about it. The Australian government uses it for post-traumatic stress disorder treatment with their veterans. They also use it for concussion treatment, head injury. It was originally called a think tank. They used to use it with high-level CEOs, executives to help them brainstorm. Basically, it looks like there's different kinds, but mine is like a pod. You could go on Jim Laird, GYMLAIRD.com and check it out. But it looks like a pod. It's got a clamshell on it. I can't remember how many gallons of water in it, but it's basically a hot tub, essentially, with 800 pounds of salt in it. You just get in there, you close the lid, you can put on a guided meditation or relaxing music or Slayer if you want to. It doesn't really matter. But whatever relaxes you, you can put on. I just go silent. I close the lid. And it's the closest thing to using psychedelic drugs without using psychedelic drugs. You end up having almost an out-of-body experience once you can relax, because a lot of people's minds are just so spun. I was when I got sick. I was so spun in my head, I couldn't sit still for 2 minutes without my leg, bouncing up and down. And so you're there, you're in this weightless environment. I have full overhead mobility. I could put my biceps on my ears, which I can't do, normally. All your weight's off your spine. Your ribs are in a good position. You're able to breathe well. It's just, when I first got it, I was floating every day, and I was floating for 90 minutes in between my morning session and my PM session. I was so stoned I couldn't coach. I'd get out of the float tank and I'd come out and I've got anywhere between 4 and if my lifting team's in here, I could have up to 12 girls in here at a time. And I was literally, I couldn't function because I was so relaxed that I couldn't coach. So I found that, like, this afternoon I floated for 15 minutes. Like, 15 to 20 minutes is my sweet spot. Like, if I float for 15 to 20 minutes, I feel like I've slept for 8 hours. Because I can get in there and shut off immediately. I go into, like, the twilight zone, I call it. It's really popular on the West Coast. They're popping up all over the place. It shuts off everything. It gives you, like, it's kind of like a little piece of heaven. I mean, it's pretty awesome. And the more you use it, the better you get at it. Like, I've got clients that have been there 8-10 times now, and they're just like, dude, that is amazing. So it's a tool. I started going up to Dayton to use it, once or twice a month when I ended up having colitis, just to help me relax and shut off. It shuts off stress. It relaxes you, shuts off inflammation and all that kind of stuff, and it helps you relax. It helps you learn how to chill.
I could definitely use help with that.
Yeah, it's something I've definitely wanted to try. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, people don't realize the stuff that makes you good at what you do is also kills you at the same time. I mean, just ask Steve Jobs. I mean,
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. All right, cool. So one question I have, just kind of stemming off something you brought up earlier, was, you train a wide variety of different populations.
Yes.
What are a couple things that across the board are constants, though, that are just going to help everybody from a training standpoint?
Just getting down on the floor, moving on the floor, getting around. I think getting people in a neutral position, even if it's in quadruped, if you get people in the ribs in a good position, like before all the PRI stuff and before all of that stuff, I used to use the Parisi warm-up when I first started, like in 2001, 2002, 2003. And I'd have people get in quadruped, do all the knee circles, the glute bridges, all that stuff, like 10 or 15 minutes of that. And I just noticed everybody's squats got better. Everybody's deadlifts get better. There's something about getting on the floor, getting on your back, rolling around on the floor that just kind of helps your body figure out the way it needs to move. And just moving, getting some movement variability. But the biggest thing that carries over amongst all populations is work capacity. People just don't have it because we just don't do anything. I'll ask you a question. Why is the fitness industry so popular now? Like, why do we have so many gyms? Like, there wasn't that many gyms in the 50s, 60s, 70s even. Why is there more people are working out now than ever? Why is that?
I mean, my answer would be because you pay someone to mow your lawn, you pay someone to clean your house. You pay
We've outsourced everything. You don't have to. If you had to shovel coal for your furnace, like my grandfather did, and he had to build his own barns, and he had to do all these chores and cut up fish for his mink, and I grew up in a farming community. When you have to milk cows every day, and you have to mow grass, and you have to do all these chores, you don't need a gym,
right?
And if you're eating real food. So today we've outsourced everything. People don't do jack shit. They don't do anything. They don't mow their own lawn. Half the people don't do anything. So that's why there's more people working out, but people are trying to make up for low-level manual labor every day and free play with intensity. And it doesn't make up for it. You can't make up for that low-level activity all the time, like walking every day. Like, people drive everywhere now. They don't walk. You can't make up for that with intensity. You can use intensity as a tool, but most people don't have the work capacity or the ability to handle that intensity, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think, like, the transition that you kind of alluded to earlier, too, is, like, when people did do the manual labor, what was the gym for? It was for people that...
High performance, bodybuilders.
Yeah, like physical culture, like,
Yes.
And so I think, one of the problems we see is that's still probably... I mean, in my opinion, like, still the most prevalent idea that surrounds the gym. So you do see people underprepared coming in and then getting put on, a more physical culture or performance-enhancing based program.
Sure.
Instead of doing farmer's carries and crawling and, moving wheelbarrows that you can put plates on instead of
dragging a sled outside, moving around for 10 or 15 minutes. Yeah, exactly. And walking. People just are so bored they don't they don't want to walk because it's not exciting enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure a lot of the best powerlifters that you trained with, like in the early 2000s, Jim, I'm sure a lot of those guys probably worked manual labor jobs, right? So like,
sure. Well, Louis used to talk about, you bring the average construction worker and he's going to deadlift 500 pounds without even being able to train. So you don't see that much anymore. But yeah, a lot of the guys that I trained with were doing some sort of construction manual labor type work. One of the reasons I didn't destroy myself when I was growing up in high school, we did some really dumb stuff in the weight room, is because I baled hay my whole life. I ran a jackhammer, I mowed lawns, I played, I climbed fences. We used to play outside for hours. When you have that capacity of movement and the wrestling and all that stuff, you're more resilient. And you guys know as well as I do, these kids today are not resilient. They're just not. They're highly specialized, but they're very fragile. They don't have the capacity to handle any kind of stress. And they spend the whole summer inside in air conditioning playing video games, and then they get thrown into a program that looks like a college program. And they wonder why we got kids getting heat stroke and puking all over the place and having kids like have heart attacks and stuff. It's because they're not prepared. We used to play outside. I ran a jackhammer all summer. When I went to 2-a-days, it was a vacation. I was like, dude, this is awesome, dude. Run a jackhammer out in the heat 8 to 10 hours a day. And you go to college, and you go to football practice, which is like an hour in the morning, hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half at night. You're like, dude, this is a holiday.
Yeah, it's fun again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Well, and I think these days, what I've noticed is most kids get their introduction to strength and conditioning because they're hurt. Like they come in and they're referred there because they're in some kind of pain that's finally keeping them from playing their sport.
Right.
And so,
yeah, and also if they are introduced to strength and conditioning, it's a load that's way too inappropriate, that they're having to use a high threshold pattern to lift the weight. They're loading these kids up. Like I see kids that are like, they'll come in and they'll tell me like, yeah, I squatted like 350 for 5. And I'm like, really? Like pick that 30-pound kettlebell up over there. They give me a squat and they're like, their heads back, they're in extension, their knees collapsing, and they're practically falling on the ground. I'm like, it's crazy. I'm just like, really? So these kids are being exposed to stressors. They don't want to slow cook these kids. They're looking at what, the university of whatever is doing for their strength program, and they're loading these, like I've got, 14, 15-year-old kids where they're taking maxes like 3 times a year. I'm like, really? I'm like, you guys just need to be doing some prowler pushes and carries, and then learning how to squat with a kettlebell, and then just let the strength happen on its own through residual stuff like dragging things and pushing things, and instead of loading these kids up, they're not power lifters. They don't understand that. So you see a lot of that.
Yeah, especially in the school side of things, like the high school, college strength and conditioning programs. For the first time ever, I ran into a problem where I had an athlete long enough to get him to do things correctly, and he was a football player. He's a linebacker, defensive end, and it was appropriate to get him stronger. So
sure,
I got him a lot stronger. He's squatting 500 pounds, doing all the prerequisites to be a high-level player. And unfortunately, it's almost like where that came back to kill me was I'm not with him all year. He goes back to his
right.
Private high school program. And now I got a kid that can handle massive weight, serious weights, and
right.
is thrown into one of those programs.
Sure.
And we had a setback because of that,
yes.
Because if those programs aren't doing a good job of managing these kids when they aren't strong, it almost gets worse if you send them a strong kid and then they just...
Right. Well, what I do with that is I teach the kid, look, and I have a prime example of that, a kid I worked with in 2002 who was played at a 1AA school who was set to be a number, drafted in the first 2 rounds of the draft. And I told him, don't try and set the bench press record for the school you're at. Don't do it. You're not a weightlifter. This is way back in the day when I was, lifting heavy weights with everything. I'm like, you're not a weightlifter. You're not going to get paid. Just because you have the highest bench of the team doesn't mean you're the best player. And he ended up tearing his pec trying to bench 475. And so I sit all my kids down. I'm like, look, you are not a power lifter. You're not a weightlifter. Just work up to a decent weight that challenges you and stop there.
Yeah.
And if the coach has a problem with it, just tell him it hurts. And the strength coach is not going to determine if you play or not. And most of the kids I work with are pretty good athletes. So they're going to play regardless of what the strength coach says. So I said, don't be a dick about it or don't be an ass about it. But just say, coach, that's all I can handle. Anything heavier than that hurts. And then I tell them to go to the athletic trainer if they persist above that. I said, but most of the kids that I work with, once I've worked with them for a while, they're squatting well over what everyone else is with better form. So they'll just work up to something they're comfortable with, and they'll do it, and then they'll just leave it there. And I always tell them, like, look, you want your training max, if they're going to do that, to be less, because the higher quality work with a little bit lower percentages, you're going to get stronger in the long run. If you get all hyped up and everybody's screaming at you and you overreach and say your actual squat is 385 and they scream at you and yell at you and punch you in the face and you jam your head back and you go into extension and your knees buckle in and you squat through 435, well, all your work sets are going to be based off that 435. Right. And that means all your work sets are going to be shit, right? Excuse my language. So I always tell them to work up to just a little bit under, and then I teach them, like, okay, this is how you talk to the strength coach. Okay, this exercise bothers me. Like, I had a basketball player. They insisted that he pulled from the floor all the time. And I told him, go up to the coach and say, look, coach, my back is killing me when I pull from the floor, but when I pull from these bumpers, it's okay. Is it okay if I pull from bumpers? And the coach was like, sure, pull from bumpers. So a lot of it is educating the kids to actually go up and talk to the coach and say, hey, coach, this hurts. Yeah. And then if you have an asshole of a coach who's like, you're going to pull from the floor. Like, I have a kid that I worked with who every one of their players, regardless of who they were, squatted West Side style, super wide, like you've got briefs on, and messing everybody up. And he ended up having to go to the athletic trainer to override the strength coach because it wasn't good for his hip structure. But I'll tell him, talk to the coach first, be super cool about it. Don't be a know-it-all. Just say, hey, coach, how about can I pull from blocks instead? Or what if instead of doing that overhead press, how about I press a bar in the corner? Just ask them questions. Don't be a cocky about it. But most strength coaches, and I know plenty of them, are going to be willing to work with the player if they say, hey, coach, this hurts, but I can do this instead. So I'll go through their strength program and I'll say, any of the, I'll actually do a lot of this. I do a lot of the stuff that they're doing in their program. And then I teach them, like, okay, this is probably not a good idea, so ask your coach if you could do this instead. So a lot of it's education. A lot of it's teaching them how to talk to their strength coach, how to not be intimidated by their strength coach, and how to talk to the athletic trainer if the strength coach isn't willing to basically help them out, because then the athletic trainer could come in and say, look, this is a medical problem. This kid's in pain when he does this. Because I tell them, you could be the best guy in the weight room, but if you're hurt from the weight room, you ain't playing. So you're better off underlifting a little bit and doing it well than you are killing yourself in the weight room and not being able to play. Because, like, being on the field is what's most important, not the weight room.
Yeah. Rule number one.
We spend a lot of time teaching athletes to be advocates for themselves. And you love the kid who will go in and work hard and do anything that the coach asks, but sometimes it's almost to a fault.
Correct. Most of the kids that get hurt that I see are the ones that are like, the coach will go, run into that wall 50 times. Yes, sir. It's just like, dude, like, how about you go up to the coach and go, you run into the wall 50 times in a row. So, and I was like that too. Like, you want to go hard, but there comes a point where you've got to become an advocate for yourself and say, there are times you got to just suck it up and you got to go. Like, that's just kind of the deal. But if you're in severe pain deadlifting from the floor, the deadlifting blocks is just as good or better for that person. If they can't keep a good position in their spine, it's just a matter. A lot of times the kids are just intimidated by the strength coach and they won't go talk to him. Yeah. And there's been times when I've called to talk to the strength coach too, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. I'd love to get your opinion on this. It's a topic that we kind of piggybacks off this that we talked about on another episode. Let's say you have a guy. The lifts aren't necessarily causing them any pain. They're not hurt. But obviously, we pick certain exercises maybe based on the fact that there's just a higher, the risk to reward is lower. So
absolutely.
Let's say just like an overhead throwing athlete, we shy away from a back squat just to get them out of this position a little longer.
Sure.
Our take on it when we discussed it on another episode was you're going to have guys that go off to college and they back squat, and that's what they do in the weight room. Are you in the camp of saying, well, I'm going to educate my athlete, even though we don't back squat here, I do want to set them up to be successful when they go to college, so I'll teach them how to back squat before they leave.
Of course. I'll expose them to that, but I'll also tell them to go to the strength coach, or I'll call the strength coach and say, hey, is safety squat bar an option? Yeah. And if they say, yeah, absolutely, then I don't have to worry about it. And if they say, hell no, everybody back squats, that's the best way to do it, then obviously they have to be exposed to back squats, because if they go the whole summer without having the bar in this position, they're going to have problems with that. Then we really, really work on making sure that, their upper back is tight, and then we're doing some other things to, we're doing some overhead carries, and we're doing some other things to create some, some resiliency in that shoulder. And a lot of it depends on who it is. Like, if you're working with, like, I've worked with some pretty high-level athletes, and if you're working with, like, a really big-time stud kid, that big-time stud kid is going to have some pull.
Right.
In the weight room, he can go to the head coach, or he can go to the athletic trainer and say, hey, coach, when I put my arms back like this, it really hurts my shoulder. Do you think I could use a safety bar instead? And those people are pretty open-minded. But the kids that, especially the girls, like, that's the girls, I try and look at what they're doing in their programming. Even if I don't think it's the greatest thing, I at least expose them to it so that it isn't the first time they do it because I've had some girls get really hurt because I've had some girls that had, soccer players and stuff that had never lifted weights, and they're maxing the first day in the weight room. They're like major colleges, and it's insane. Like, you got a beginner, you don't need a 1-rep max. They're going to get stronger doing anything. Like, pushing the prowler carries and bear crawls for 4 weeks, and I guarantee you they'll be stronger with zero risk. But it's not fancy, and you can't chart and graph that. So.
True. Yeah, that's always been a puzzling one. The day one testing, especially since if you asked any of those coaches, hey, do you plan on getting this person? Will this person be stronger in 12 weeks than they are today? Of course, they're going to say yes. Yet somehow.
That's why the Block Zero program is by Joe Cann is so essential. When I was at Arizona, I remember going from Liberty to Arizona. I was like, Liberty was a 1AA school. I'm like, man, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to Arizona. This is big time, Pac-10. We're going to be able to do so many cool things with these athletes. I'm like, we're going to be working with, and there was some badasses. There was Olympians there. I mean, Gilbert Arenas was there, Jenny Finch, Amanda Beard was there. But half of these kids couldn't do a bodyweight reverse hyper.
Yeah.
Like, they were struggling with raising. I remember sitting with Brad in the room and going, what the hell's going on here? And he's like, dude, they've just never been in the weight room. Like, they just, half of them couldn't do an inverted row. And it was all basics and fundamentals, and these kids got a lot better. But, that's just kind of the way it is. Like, they're not weightlifters, they're athletes, so a lot of people, I think, have to make it super fancy, but in reality, for most kids, it's not super, or even for the individual, it's not super fancy. You just need to do some real basic things, and you need to do them well, and you need to pick exercises that put them in the best position possible. And then if you have somebody who's got some weird, funky stuff, then you need to refer them to somebody who's an expert.
Make it sound so logical, Jim.
Well, and not to cut on anybody or anything, but, somebody asked me a while back, I put out a product, Molly Galbraith wrote the manual, and I did like it was called Boot Camp in a Box. Mike Robertson and we all collaborated on it. It was a great product, how we basically trick people. We used to advertise boot camp, but then it was basically strength training when they came to class. So we would bring people in with boot camp, and then they'd trick them into doing strength training. That's kind of how we did that. Yeah. And people are like, why haven't you done another product, or haven't you put anything else up? And I'm like, the average person, like the average 13, 14-year-old soccer girl that comes to me, they need to do carries, they need to do bear crawls, and they need to push the prowler for 4 to 6 weeks. You can't sell that in a product. But guess what? You do carries, bear crawls, and prowler with these girls for 4 to 6 weeks at varying intensities depending on their schedule. They are a totally different person in 4 to 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden they can squat. all of a sudden they have the ability to do all the the first week they push the prowler, their knees are caving in and their ankles are buckling and they can't control anything. And by the fourth week, they start moving better. And obviously we do like some sort of athletic dynamic warm up too, but you can't sell that in a product because it's so simple, but it works. Like Windler told me years ago, I was kind of stressing out. I was like, what certification do I get next? What do I do next? He's like, dude, be the best beginner coach possible, because most people never go beyond beginner. Most people never do. They don't invest enough time into it to do that. And so I'm not saying that you shouldn't get continuing education and all that stuff, but so many people get caught up in all these different things that are going on when most people just need a solid dose of the fundamentals. And especially because we don't get PE anymore. Kids don't get PE. They don't do gymnastics. They don't do all these different things. So us as the strength coaches, we have to take up that kind of slack with these kids and build resilience and build capacity in the best way we possibly can and the simplest way we possibly can.
That's great stuff.
Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. It brings us back to, like some of the things that we've talked about, like certain athletes where, we want them to squat. Maybe it's like a high school football player. One comes into mind because we had this conversation, and it's like you can spend 4 to 6 weeks with 95 pounds on the bar, just trying again and again and again to just cue his technique on the squat, or you can do something that's way less technical for 4 to 6 weeks that just builds up requisite strength and work.
You can do both. I mean, you can do reaching squats with a rope as part of a warm-up. You can do goblet squat, whatever he can do well. And then you build general strength with prowler. You build general strength with bear crawls. You build general strength with, carries, the general stuff. And then all of a sudden, 4 to 6 weeks, you throw the bar on his back again, and oh my God, he's squatting 225. Right. I mean, I've seen it happen time and time again. Yeah. It's not rocket science.
Absolutely. All right.
It happens with my girls too. You teach them how to do some basic stuff. You get them moving around on the floor, and all of a sudden, boom, they're lifting. They're pulling 300 pounds for a single. And we, didn't do anything fancy. We just taught them. The big thing is teaching them how to use their middle. I mean, most people have no idea how to brace.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna carry that topic on here in a second. We're at the halfway point, which means it's time for another beer, and I know this is a personal favorite of yours.
Sure is.
See, I've had a shot and a beer, so I've had my 2 drinks.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I have to, I'll go get another one. You just,
Hey, no, it's up to you. We do not. We don't push the alcohol on anybody.
Yeah, I need to drive home after this. My shot of 94 proof and my beer, I think that counts for 3 drinks. Don't you think? Maybe 4?
I think so. Yeah, you definitely.
The way I'm feeling right now, it should count for 4.
I'm definitely gonna give you the 2. You got the requisite 2.
All right.
So beer number 2 of the night is Konkey from Hoof out of Ohio. This beer, we've had a couple beers from this brewery on here before, but this is the first one I ever tried. The can art is second to none. Yes, that's Donkey Kong with a hole cut out of the barrel in a very particular place. But this is a double IPA from Hoof, and when I went to Columbus, Ohio to help my sister Alex lift at the Arnold Classic this year, Greg texted me and said, hey, you should check and see if they have any Hoof, and I just happened to be at the arcade bar where this beer was first ever released. So I tried it on draft, and it was amazing, and definitely rings true to kind of the New England style IPA that we like. It's very hazy, very tropical, and absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Did you just say New England is tropical?
But our beer is.
Yeah. That's kind of like my description on my wild, my wild vodka or gin. Sorry. Oh, dude, it's bad.
This actually has a pretty good description too.
It says Konkey Dong. Now that's what I call a joystick, fermented in Donkey Kong barrels and excessively.
Is this a family show?
No,
not anymore. It's not.
Oh, okay.
We already have the parental advisory thing on iTunes, so we figured anything goes at this point. Word. Yep.
It's excessively dry hopped with tutti frutti hops from the Pacific Northwest and New Zealand. Brewed in collaboration with Arcade Super Awesome. So Arcade Super Awesome is in downtown Columbus. It's half arcade, half bar, and
Konkey Dong.
Half arcade. I know you can't have half and a half and a half, so it's a third bar, a third arcade, and a third pizza shop. So we drank beers, and then we played arcade games, and then we went downstairs and got pizza for dinner, and it was just an all-around amazing experience.
It's like Chuck E. Cheese's for adults.
Really, it was that good.
Dude, where is this place?
It's in Columbus, Ohio, so if you
dude, 3 hours away, I need to go.
Yeah, it's a great spot. There are a lot of hipsters there, but
yeah, and then I can have like lunch with Windler too at Bob Evans, where we always have lunch when I go up there.
I don't know Jim personally, but I know he would fucking hate this place.
Oh, I know. That's why I would never. See, Jim meets me. I went up to see him actually 2 weeks ago. I didn't go up to see him. I went to pick my belt squat machine up, and it was in Columbus. So I met Jim at Bob Evans, the same Bob Evans I always meet him at. And Windler is a very interesting person. I lived with him for a year, so got some pretty good stories.
I bet we may save that for like an after episodes episode.
Yeah, you gotta pay for that one.
Yeah.
And you gotta check ID for that one too.
So Jim, one thing I really wanted to ask you about is something that you helped me with tremendously a while back, and that's your women's powerlifting team that you run. So when I first started working at Cressy Sports Performance, Eric asked me, what is it that I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to start a powerlifting team. He said, great, start a women's one, because men's powerlifters are slobs and they're disgusting and they'll fuck up the gym. So I said, okay, great.
That's true. That's a true statement, and they don't have money either. They're broke.
So he immediately gave me your phone number, and I called you shortly after, and you spent a good deal of time just chatting with me, and I really appreciated it. You gave me some awesome advice, but tell us a little bit about your women's powerlifting group and how it's evolved over the years.
Sure. Well, it just kind of started because just started having women do basic lifts, deadlifts and squats, and these girls would be like, particularly the deadlift, like, I love the deadlift. So, I just had a bunch of girls just say one day, I really like this, what can we do? I said, well, let's do a powerlifting meet for fun. Started with a few girls, and then all of a sudden we ended up having a meet where we had 20-something girls doing it, and we just keep things really simple, and nobody comes. I've only had one or two girls come to me that were already lifting. It's mostly girls that we get from class, or a friend brings them in and they're like, hey, I want to try this. And the big thing that really made the difference was like in 08, 09, I'd gotten in a car accident. I went up to see Mike Robertson, Bill Hartman. And Bill Hartman was like, dude, you're so extended. Like, you have no idea how to brace. Because I was taught, West Side, push out the front of your belt, so I wasn't bracing circumferentially, and God bless Louis, I love Louis to death, but when you've got a multi-ply squat suit, you got double-ply briefs and double-ply suit on, and you compete in a federation where you don't have to hit parallel, you can super arch your back and be fine. I mean, it doesn't feel good, but that squat suit, you're squatting big weights and you're extended. You can't do that when you're competing raw. You can't be extended like that because you're not going to be able to get to depth. And, most women don't want to lift if they're in pain. So once I learned about the proper bracing stuff, I was like, oh, bingo. Like, that's why my back's tight all the time. That's why I, brush my teeth with my spinal erectors. So once I learned how to brace properly, all of a sudden I carried that over to my clients. All of a sudden, they weren't hurting after they did that list and they weren't in pain. All the women that like pain are in CrossFit, which is fine. I mean, if you like, if you like that, that's great. But your average, normal, everyday housewife does not want to be walking around with their back hurting or their shoulder hurting all the time. So teaching them how to brace circumferentially, is the key to that. And so, when I bring someone in for assessment and I tell them to do a bodyweight squat and they throw their head back and flare their ribs and go into this like holy shit position, I'm like, we're not going to load that. We're going to do some bubblegum farts. We're going to do some things that teach them how to, bubblegum fart. You put the stability ball against the wall, that kind of deal. We're going to do stuff to teach them how to brace properly, so that they know how to brace. We're going to do kettlebell squats. We're going to do kettlebell deadlifts. We're going to do all sorts of trunk work to teach them how to engage their core. So when they do lift heavier, they can use their whole trunk. And that's been the game changer. Like in 08, 09, when I started implementing that, I started getting more and more women, because I'd have women would pull some decent weights and they wouldn't hurt the next day.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest reason women, I think, are scared of weightlifting is they go into a gym, somebody throws a bar on their back, they fly into extension, they throw their head back, they're jamming their back together, and they can't walk for 3 days. And they're like, shit, I don't want to do that. So basically the biggest thing we do is get them moving well. We get them in a good position. That doesn't mean we can't lift heavier. We can start them off with block pulls. We can start them by pulling a kettlebell off a block, and then we gradually, same deal, find whatever squat they can do. It could be a reaching squat. It could be a squat with a weight out in front, any kind of squat that they can do with decent form. And then you do general things that have low risk to build general strength. And that's how you get somebody going in the right direction. And then you can get them into that, sport specific, phase, so to speak. But, most of it, and most women can only handle about 10 to 12 weeks of serious powerlifting training, and then they get bored out of their skull, and then you do something different. So we do about 10 to 12 weeks of powerlifting, and then we switch to like a strong girl combined with like an athletic type training where we're doing some athletic stuff, and we're incorporating some reaching, and that way these girls aren't developing like shoulder issues and things like that. I probably leave a little bit of weight on the table as far as their total, but they're not, the girls I work with are not trying to be like world record holders, although I do have some world record holders. They're not trying to be that, so they want to be able to play with their kids. They want to be able to go hiking. So I kind of flirt with the powerlifting. We get really serious the last 4 to 6 weeks, and we get really specific. But then we go back and we go general. And now that I got this belt squat machine too, that's really going to help because I can still squat them really heavy without a bar on their back. So it'll be able to, we'll go away from it for a few weeks. We'll come back to it before meets. We do about 2 meets a year, but we mix the training up. We keep it really simple. Like the basic beginner program is something that looks like 5-3-1. And then as I've got girls now that have been competing at a serious level with me for almost 6 years now, their training starts to look a little fancier. Like we start doing some different things. And, but it's fairly simple and a lot of accessory work because that keeps them excited, like lots of glute work and, lots of things like that because they want to have that nice butt. And, we do a lot of accessory work that might not directly carry over to powerlifting, but keeps them happy.
Yeah, the boredom thing, I've definitely experienced that. And
powerlifting's boring. It's very boring.
And sometimes I have to remind myself that, like, not everyone can just go full steam ahead on squat, bench, deadlift all the time and not get bored.
And, an upper body day, we have them push some prowler, do some prowler suicides with a lightweight, have them throw some med balls, maybe do some different things, between, if I have some, I've got some girls that they're a little beat up and got some issues, and I've got some girls that are really good athletes, and so it varies from person to person. I think that's the biggest thing. The hardest thing is women are very competitive, and the hardest thing is getting them to understand, okay, that girl's doing that, and I'm doing this. Why is that? I got one girl that pulls close to 400 pounds at 135, and she has a hard time understanding. She pulls conventional, too, by the way. She's badass, and one of the best physical body for powerlifting that I've ever seen, like 300 plus pound squat, flirting with 400 pound deadlift. I saved her from marathon running about 5 or 6 years ago. Thank God. Just unbelievable structure for the sport and looks fantastic too, by the way. But, she doesn't understand, like, how come this girl that's weaker than me, I'm lifting the same amount of weight? Well, most of my girls pull sumo. She pulls conventional. I'm like, girl, you can't be loading that conventional up every week super heavy or you're going to be like beat to hell. Like these girls that pull sumo can pull a little bit more than you can. So she'll be doing like, she'll be doing a lower percentage, speed work type stuff, explosive type work because she's strong enough to actually do that. Most girls aren't strong enough to do classical explosive type work. But she won't understand why she's using the same weights they are. And I'm like, it's because if we were working at the same percentage as they are, 1, sumo doesn't beat you up as much. 2, if you're pulling at the same percentage as them, you wouldn't have a spine by the time we got through the cycle. So they're very competitive. They look at what each other are doing. Well, how come she's doing that? Well, she was a former Division I athlete, and she can do all that stuff, and it doesn't wreck her, whereas, you're not a former Division I athlete. No, nothing wrong with that. It's just that certain people can handle certain things. That's the hardest thing is keeping them all kind of like not comparing themselves to each other, because it kind of happens whenever you get a group of women together, and God, if some of them are watching this, oh boy.
And I don't know, in my experience, none of that competitiveness happens to each other's faces. It's all behind their backs, at least.
I my ears sometimes are just
Yeah.
like my phone. It's like it blows up. Like, what the hell? What? How come she lifted more than I did today? And I'm like, it's all part of the plan. Just trust the plan. Trust the program.
And I think I asked this. It might have been last episode. Like, do you ever find that some of your stronger females almost hold themselves back because they don't want to make other lifters feel bad?
You know, that's an interesting question. I've never really experienced that directly, but you know, I could see that happening. I could seriously see that happening.
It wasn't the podcast. It was an in-service. Now that I think about it, because I used to group like all similar strength females like together, like they share a power rack or whatever. And what I was finding that was the stronger of the two females. Or like they wouldn't necessarily always push each other because they didn't. I know you said females are competitive, and I certainly agree to a certain point. But sometimes I would use the word jealous. Yeah.
Sometimes, not all the time. My girls are usually pretty good about that stuff. But I will agree that if you have one person that's at such a high level, she needs someone that can push her a little bit. And if you have somebody who's here and everyone else is here, it's kind of hard. Like, it takes a special kind of person. Like when I was competing, my lifting partners, there was one guy that was fairly close to me, but my total was like 600 pounds more than everyone else's. So, but I'm very internally motivated. But it's hard. You know, that's why places like Westside work so well, because you've got everybody's like at a high level pushing each other. But I really try and kind of douse that competitiveness. I kind of just hey, let's do the best we can with the best kind of form we can today. And I found, like, I can't remember how many girls have had pull over 300 pounds, but most of these girls that pulled over 300 pounds never lifted anything like above 265 in training.
Yep.
Especially when you're a beginner, like you can severely underlift someone, especially if they don't know how much weight's on the bar. Like when you're working with beginners, like underlift them, like seriously underlift them, and then like push the accessory work a little bit. That's one thing Windler taught me, was like every time you come in the gym, as part of your warm up, like, you know, one of the things we do for warm up is we do a lot of core work to get them, you know, learning how to brace and hold that brace. But every time they come in the gym, they're doing like some sort of pull up, or not pull up, but like a pull down, a lat pull down, or they're doing a push up, they're doing a glute ham raise, they're doing a carry every time they come in, like 3 or 4 sets of that to kind of get warmed up, because these are all areas we need to improve on. You know, these are all things, and we might change it up if somebody has like a specific weakness, but, you know, working on, you know, not wasting your time in the warm up with silly stuff. You know, obviously you want to do some things, but the biggest thing for most women is they need to get more stable. And so we're doing things in their warm-up. They're going to help them with that. But I really try and focus on just being the best version of yourself possible, and I'm not trying to like create this huge competitive. Most of these women are so hard on themselves. They don't need anything more. Like, they're so critical, and, you know, like, I try to explain to them, like, it was a good reminder. I went up to the IFAST velocity-based training thing. And, you know, it's true. Like, your performance, max performance, can vary 18% either direction, either way. Yeah. 18 to 20%.
That's huge.
But, and that's huge. Like, you get a 400-pound deadlifter, that's a 66-pound swing. So I try to tell them, like, let's just do the best effort. Like, when I work with people, I'm like, okay, we're going to do 5s, 3s, or we're going to do some like explosive type work. Let's work up to the best 3 that you can work with today, and let's work with something that's clean, and let's just stay there. And usually when I go back and look at the numbers, it usually works out to be in Piliprin's chart. That's just kind of how it works backwards. So I don't really get caught up in numbers. I know kind of generally where I need to be, but I work up to whatever they can do on that day, and we work there. If we end up doing 3 sets of 3 at, you know, it ends up being 75% or it ends up being 87%, that's great. It's whatever they can do in a good position and hold their technique in a good way. Some days it's going to be higher, some days it's going to be lower. I know I'm going to do 5s on this day. I know I'm going to do threes on this day. And with my more advanced people, we're going to pull back-to-back singles. I've really become a big fan of that. Like people that have been lifting a little while, they pull a single, they step back. 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 We could go anywhere between 6 and 12 singles. And it forces them to get their technique better every single rep. And then if they basically get out of position a little bit, they can go, oh, shit, that wasn't as good. And then they can fix their technique. So I'll have them pull up to 12 singles. We got a meet in about 3-4 weeks. So right now we're doing like, for the last 3 weeks, we'll do with the girls that have been doing it a while. Most of the other girls we'll be doing triples with and stuff like that. But the girls that have been doing it a while, we'll pull 6 singles, and then we'll do like, say with anywhere between 65 and 75%. And then we'll pull like 3 or 4 singles and get up into the 90s. And they're usually super clean. They're usually like, I'll have girls that'll squat their previous meet PR like super fast. Because they've primed their nervous system. They've lifted that, 65, 70% explosively, and then all of a sudden they do 1, 2, or 3 singles at, 80, 85, 90, and it's like, wow. They're like, what confidence is that? I've done, for 3 weeks in a row, I've done 3 singles at 95%. It's flying up. So I'll use that as well, but I don't even know what the original question was because I'm, this gin really freaking lit me up. So what was the original question? Did I even come close to answering it?
Yeah, no, you did. You answered it, and then some,
okay.
But it was all applicable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Applicable is a good word.
Thank you. Yeah.
Greg struggles with big words on the podcast.
Thank you for your service, by the way. Tony, were you in the military?
I was not.
Okay, we got the camel.
I just wear the camel hat.
Thank you with Memorial Day, Greg Robbins. Thank you for your service.
It's San Jose /
So what's left of this fine country?
Yes, what's left?
we won't get into politics.
No, that's something we're just not qualified for, at least on this end.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that, just because sometimes I like to, for the people that listen to each episode, draw some stuff that always comes up, I guess you could say, where if there's one lift where like I feel like intent matters way more than how much weight you're putting on the bar, it would be the deadlift.
Yes.
And I think I've personally learned that lesson the hard way. Always thinking like I had to pull heavy when really the best deadlifts are happening when I'm pulling super explosively.
Correct.
Your body has no idea what you're about to lift, which is a huge difference between that lift and the other two. From a powerlifting standpoint. So just because you're lifting 65 to 75% of your, 1 rep max, doesn't mean you're coming to that bar with the intent. You're coming still with 100, 105. Actually, I don't like that phrase. 100% intent of, of what you're going to lift. And then obviously your body finds out. But, we've had one of the hardest things to get women to do is to do their warm up sets explosively. Yeah.
Because usually they're like, I'm just gonna pull this weight for 10 reps. Okay. Yeah. Like pull the bar explosively. That's hard for them to understand. And then once they finally learn it, like I need to, as the weight gets heavier, I need to pull it just as fast, and that's when you can get girls that are 135 that end up pulling like over, 300 pounds on the deadlift because they're pulling it explosively. And, when I first started powerlifting, I could only deadlift like 500 pounds. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of me sitting on my butt on the internet with my arms not even on the floor. The T-Rex thing,
Yeah.
So I can sit on my ass and sit up tall, and I can put my legs out straight, and my arms will not touch the floor.
I wonder if I can do that.
I've got to see if Tony can do that.
No, so my arms are so short. Like I have to round my upper back to pull, so I can get to the bar because my arms are so short, and my torso is ridiculously tall. Like when I was working in Arizona with basketball, I would sit next to the 7-footers, and I'd be taller than them sitting down.
That is pretty.
So I have the shortest arms and the shortest legs in the world, and this super tall torso. Like Quinn Haniok, I was helping him with a seminar in Louisville, and he was like, "Dude, you'd have been the perfect Olympic lifter. Like, I could have done like a snatch like this, with, like, narrow. I can't do that obviously, but I could have done the snatch like with almost near my ears because my arms are so short. Like I almost cut my head off. What was I talking about? Let's see.
How short?
So, remind me what I was talking about.
Pulling explosively.
Getting women to pull
explosively. So Chuck Vogapol pulls me aside. He's like, dude, there's no reason why you shouldn't be. Like, 500-pound pull is, like, terrible. You don't even know how to load the bar. You know, so, like, all my weight was forward. I was trying to lift the bar instead of creating leverage. And that's the one thing that's hard to get people to understand is pulling yourself into position, creating that pressure, creating the force into the ground where you're using your body as a teeter-totter. Like I try to explain to these girls, like you're using your body as a lever to help you pull the bar. And that's the biggest mistake I see is people are not using their body, they're using their leverage. They're trying to lift the bar. And when you lift the bar, you're lifting you and the bar. When you're using leverage and you're bending that bar and you're creating pressure and you're getting your armpits in line with the bar and you're bending that bar, then you're creating that leverage where you're using your body weight to help you lift it. And if you can get a woman to figure that out, she can lift a shit ton of weight and embarrass a lot of guys, which is really cool.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like it's a crowbar instead of using your hands. But
that's the hardest thing to get. These girls to understand is how to brace and how to create tension because they just haven't done it. Like guys, a lot of guys, they spend time doing dumb things, whereas girls don't spend as much time doing dumb things. So guys have lifted really weird things and they've had to do things that most women aren't exposed to. So guys kind of understand that, create that tension, and they've kind of strained, whereas most girls haven't done that before. So you kind of have to teach them that. I like using chains for that. With some of my beginner girls, I'll add some chain weight. We'll do some rep work, and I'll throw like a 20-pound chain on each side. So they kind of get that feeling. They start lifting it, and it's easy, and then they have to get tighter. Chains are a really good tool for that.
And you talked about, pulling multiple singles, as opposed to, let's say, rep work where you keep some tension in the bar the whole time. Last week we had Adam Pine, another one of our friends on, who's a pretty solid deadlifter, and he's advocating. Obviously, there's time and a place for everything. I guess my question is, would you ever use, let's say we're pulling a triple where we're just going to lightly touch the plates to the ground, keeping the tension in the bar to help teach a woman how to brace and how to keep tension so she can sort of. I
found the biggest thing with them is they use that momentum. The biggest problem most women have is breaking it off the floor. Okay. So I want them to pause. Like I like them to pause. I like them to set it down, count to 2. That's why I really like the multiple singles. Obviously not for somebody who's brand new. That's just too much. But for somebody who's lifted a few years, that multiple single, she's having to come, and the hardest part for most women is getting that bar off the floor, right?
Yeah.
So they have to, 6 to 12 times, they have to set up. They literally pull it, step back, and pull it again. Step back and pull it again. So they're having to set up perfectly every time, and they feel the difference between a good rep and a bad rep. So I really like that. Now, with some of the girls, would I do like a touch and go? Maybe. I haven't really played around with that because I like that put it down, create tension, and pull it again. Put it down, create tension, and pull it again. That's just me. I might experiment with some of my girls in the near future on that more touch and go, but generally I have them put it down and pick it up again because most of the girls that I deal with, like, they're going to fail on the floor.
Yeah.
They're going to fail on the floor. So I want them to pull a triple, and I want them to put it down and pause for a second and pull it again because that's where they're going to fail. Most of the girls I work with, they get it off the floor, it's going to go.
Right.
So that's kind of my reasoning behind that.
And I see a similar problem with some of our athletes too. Like sometimes I've just said, we're going to scrap these deadlifts from the floor and go RDL a little bit first, almost just to start teaching. Like I feel like sometimes the pulling it off the floor can be largely just a mentality and an intent thing too. If you're not a power lifter, there's no reason to pull from the floor. Right. where the RDL can sometimes help with that wedging sensation and that
Sure.
driving or from the legs.
Yeah, 9 times, like if I have a lifter, athlete or not, like who fails off the floor, 9 times out of 10 I'll ask him like what happened there, like it felt heavy. No shit, it felt heavy. Like you gotta stick with it. You gotta, as Josh Bryant would say, you gotta commit to the pull. Even if it feels heavy, doesn't mean you stop. It means you keep going.
Right.
I have girls every week. They're like, "That was heavy." I was like, "Yeah, it was 96%."
Yeah. About as heavy as it gets. Right. Right.
So
and on that given day, given what we talked about, it could have been 102% of perceived intensity. Cool. All right, man. You got any more questions? I don't want to keep you too long, Jim. I know you got lots of stuff to do. Look like you're ready to go there.
No, dude, I'm good. I'm riding the wave right now. Dude, that gin had some amazing carryover. I'm good, man. As long as I'm out of here by 10:00 Eastern, I'm fine.
Oh.
I got to get up early in the morning, but that's cool. But if you have more questions, or we can chat some more, or we can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah.
Well, or if you want to get rid of me, you can kick me off here.
We definitely don't want to get rid of you.
Okay.
How can the people that are going to tune in find out more about you and what you're doing?
You can go to gymlaird.com. That's my gym website. I'll be upfront and honest. I'm horrible at internet stuff. I'm horrible at organization. I'm a coach. I suck at organization and delegating, and I suck at updating my blog. I do a podcast on Body IOFM, which is Kiefer's website. They're nice enough to put up with me. I just record it, send it to them, and they do everything for me. God bless them. But I am terrible at admin. I'm terrible at all that stuff. I'm good at teaching people how to lift things, and that's what I do. So I do have a blog. It's jimlaird.org, JIMLAIRD.org. I have a Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. But my blog, I'm not very good at updating it. I need to do a better job. You guys do a fantastic job of, if you're a coach, you want to find things that trick people into doing what you want them to do. If you can get people to do a bubblegum fart in between their deadlifts to get their core working, or Tony and you guys on your push-ups, squeezing a roller between their knees to get their pelvis in a good position, that's the kind of stuff you want to look for, because people want to train. There's all sorts of great resets out there and all that stuff, and we use some of that stuff too, but people don't want to spend 10 or 15 minutes doing resets. People want to work out. And one of the great things that you guys do at Cressy Performance is you guys put practical things to get people to do what you want them to do. And that's the name of the game. You need to pick exercises that trick people into getting into the position that you want them to be in, and you need to do things that get them to do what you want them to do so they can actually train, so you can actually get a response. There's all sorts of great stuff out there, but a lot of it, people are just going to roll their eyes. And so there's that balance of, hey, this might help you, but I've got this trick so you can actually do this exercise and actually train. So you guys do a fantastic job, and if people are watching that aren't following, Cressy Performance, you guys, the tips they give out, I watch all of them, and I use many of them. And I constantly, if I can teach someone, if I can get someone squat to improve by telling them to spread their toes and drive their feet through the floor, that's the way I'm going to improve it. If I can get someone to do, one of my favorite squat improvements is what we call like a sweep. It's like the sweep position of the get up. You just sit on your ass and you sweep with your hand in the air. If I can get someone to do 3 or 4 of those in between their squats and it cleans their squat up, that's what I'm going to do, because people want to train. So, if you guys are out there, these guys, Cressy Performance with Pete and the team that you guys have are phenomenal. I'm extremely jealous because that's something I suck at. So that's where you can find me. But, you need to be following these guys at Cressy Performance because they're much better at organization and structure than I will ever be.
Yeah, don't let them talk you down, though, Jim. You got a lot of wisdom, and I mean, if there's one thing I appreciate more than anything is, over the last multiple years, you're very, very. What's the word I'm looking for? That was bad. I just ruined my whole thing there. But
you're trying to give me a compliment.
I was trying to give you a compliment, and you even complimented me on my vocabulary, and then I tried to reach for a word that just was not there.
You were in the Marines, right?
No, Army.
You're in the Army. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're like slightly better than them, like smarter, but you're very. This isn't even the word I'm looking for, but charitable with your time. You've always given it to me, so I mean, I know some young coaches watch this show, and you've always been there to help, which I've tried to pay forward from learning from you. So definitely, try to find out different stuff that Jim is doing and check out his site, and the podcast that you do is great. You've already got multiple comments on here about how you've been our best guest, so people really like what you were saying. So
well, I just say it the way I see it, like it or hate it. I just try and give my opinion, and I try and help others, and not the best businessman, not the best at running a business, but I just try and do the best I can to help other people. And if people can learn something from me, great. And if they can't, if someone reaches out to me, more than likely 99% of the time, I'm going to try to do the best I can to help them out.
Yeah, awesome. Well, time's the most precious commodity we have. You've always been very generous with yours, and we appreciate you coming on tonight and spending some time with us. And
oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. Thanks for getting me half loaded.
No problem.
On a school night.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, if you like what we're doing, make sure you check us out on iTunes. Give us a rating and a review so we can help more people find the podcast. This will be live on iTunes and YouTube later this week. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you very much. And my last announcement is Tony and I are doing our Big 3 workshop August 20th. So full-day workshop at Chrissy Sports Performance where we break down squat, bench press, and deadlift. We get super hands-on, which is what makes it different.
That's extra for that, right?
That is extra.
Probably more hands-on than what you want.
Right.
Yeah, but way more hands-on. I do wash my hands twice a day, so don't worry about that. But yeah, there's some lecture built in, but it's really hands-on, and you can kind of get some cues to work for you and take those back to work with your clients, or even if you're just a lifter yourself, it should be beneficial. So there's more information on that if you tune in to our Instagram or our website or anything like that. You should be able to find the link. Super easy, but thanks again, Jim.
You're welcome.
We're going to shut off these live feeds, and that is a wrap.
Cheers.